Welcome everyone to part 3 of this SSH series. This section is going to deal with Denyhosts. Obviously, as you saw in part 2 with IP tables, there's a lot you can do with it and a lot of different ways it can be configured. Certainly not an all-inclusive video. None of these are intended to be that, and this one certainly follows suit. So with Denyhosts, I'm going to really cover how it relates to SSH. Again, it's flexible like IP tables and much on Linux itself. You can configure it a variety of different ways, so I encourage you to look into that. Manuals, websites, other videos, etc., whatever your knowledge source would be. So we're going to do a quick little review here, and I'm going to fly backwards. You've seen this screen before in the first video. We've already dealt with etc IP tables and etc IP6 tables, and of course etc networking interfaces. So that was all part of the part 2 video dealing with IP tables. In this video, in part 3, we're going to cover etc/denyhost.conf. Denyhost is the program, denyhost.conf is the configuration file. Typical of your Linux systems, it's a .conf file. We'll get into the nitty-gritty details of that a little bit here. Next video coming up in part 4 will be fail to ban. Probably in that same video I'll do the syslog, and then the videos after that we're actually going to get into these. So right now this is where we're focused at, Denyhosts, and let's move over to that area. So here's the denyhost.conf file, and I'm not going to read off every little area of this. You can read for yourself. They're pretty descriptive. Again, I'm going to focus in on the SSH part of it. So here's what you'd have to fill out for your particular distro. This machine I'm actually running on is Ubuntu 10.04 Lucid. It's a Debian based distro, so I've got Debian here with the secure log path, and that's that auth.log file. We'll get into logs a little bit later on, but I want you to know that's the file that it's pointing to in this case. So here we go into another part of host.deny, or I'm sorry, yeah, the host.allow and host.deny and host.evil. So that's one that they customize. Host.allow and host.deny are on the system by default. Those obviously can be configured. One of the things I didn't really cover on the IP tables, and I want to mention it here. I should have mentioned it there, but you can also bind to certain IP addresses too, so you can only come in to SSH on this particular port from this particular IP, and if you set up the port NACD, there's that aspect of it. So you can really deal with the minutia and really get granular with your detail and your settings, which is one of the reasons why I and a lot of people tend to prefer Linux systems over others, because we do like to tweak so much with our settings and configurations. So host.allow, host.deny, I'm not going to get into those files. That should be pretty basic knowledge, but they certainly can and do play part of this. Just to give you a quick overview, let's cat that really quick. So as the host.deny file, you can see where I've got the Chinese blocks in there. Now if I change this to allow, there you go, there's nothing really configured in there yet because I blanked it out. So there's that. And host.evil I haven't set up. So here we get into the configuration of when these will be purged, and I've got it set up for anything older than a week. Purge entries older than 5 days, purge deny 90 days. Here you got your thresholds, etc. So I mean, all that you can modify. Here, this is what I was talking about before, where it's really designed for SSH because that's what they've got in here, but you could really use this to deny and block any service. So right now it's set to block all. Block service SSH, that's the one it's looking at. Of course I can SSH into this, but this is the one that it's looking for people attacking on. Here's your block service all there as well. Here we have more thresholds, timeouts, invalid. We definitely want to have this set to 1, which is true, to deny root. We also have root blocked in the SSHD config that we'll get into as well. So a couple different places. Some of this probably seems redundant, which really isn't a problem as long as you remember all the different areas you have to configure it and everything matches. Nothing wrong with having some redundancy and a little more depth for security. And not that that totally makes your system secure, but again, like I'd mentioned before, layers. So you can see here's more options. Library, you can suspend or suspicious logon reports, so you want that. Do the hostname lookup. If you want to disable that, might make things a little faster, but I like that, having that on. More for the distro specific things. And of course this is optional. You can certainly modify this and put in root at localhost if you have postfix or send mail or something like that set up. Put that in there. If you're using a different port, you can do that. Modify all this stuff. This is all optional, like it says, just kind of gives you an idea. Obviously I have syslog report on, so some of these I do have enabled. Going back up, you can see I have the local host, I have that, but I don't have everything going. I think that's a little crazy if you have it all on at one time. Here you have your age reset, 5 days, root 25 days, and restricted 25 days. So I mean, all these that are not commented out are all valid, and you can certainly read the specifics on this. Here you can see the log time format. I think that's an important one to have, especially the military time. There's a difference between AM and PM, obviously, and using the 24-hour military just makes it a little bit easier. Synchronization I don't really use, but there's a big section on it. So really when it comes to the SSH, most of what you're looking at is in the beginning for the specific stuff. You want to set your configurations, you want to have your syslog server, have that installed and enabled and logging. So going up to the top here, it's really this section you're looking at for the SSH. And then you want to have your logging, and then your host unallow, deny, all that. So there's not a ton in there to do with SSH specifically. It's more about the configuration of Denyhosts. I mean, it's really more about the logging, and again, you can use it for whatever you want. So that's pretty much it for Denyhosts. I know it's kind of an overview. There's not a lot, again, with the SSH, and I don't want to make an hour-long video on this going over every single line and nuance of it. Again, lots of ways to configure it. Encourage you to do some seeking on your own and learn more and set it up. This is not my ideal config. I'm still working on it in my own case. So, as always, if you have suggestions, I am open to them. You can certainly configure this ad nauseum, so have at it and have fun, and see you in the next video.